who wants some real talk about what it takes to earn passive income as a creative person. So a little bit of a disclaimer, first of all, is I might be going into some terminology that if you're not a digital creator of some sort, it might be unfamiliar to you. So just be prepared for some weird terminology if you're very new to the field. And when I say the field, I'm going to be talking about the arts as a whole. My specialty is writing, creative writing, sci-fi, fantasy, and also video game art and animation. That's kind of what I've spent my career doing. However, in my family and extended friend circles and all that, we've got screenplay writers, ballet dancers, fine artists, musicians, web comic artists, and graphic novelists, and so forth. And I'm also married to a game developer, a solo game developer, so there's that whole side of things as well. Basically, I'm a remorseless, unapologetic, lifelong creative. I've been this way since I was born, probably, and I'll keep doing it until I die, and that's all of my circles. So now I'm going to tell you how to earn passive income, or just income, as a creative. I'm going to tell you right up front, I'm not a guru, I'm not a scammer, I'm not selling courses, I am not selling you anything. And so, feel pretty free just being real here. I'll tell you personally how I make money. 1 is I have a day job. 2 is I have a Patreon, and I do have subscribers there. It's not a whole lot. 3 is investing in the stock market. And 4thly, I did get paid in advance for my 6-book novel series, which I spent over 10 years writing. You might think to yourself, like, I don't want to spend any time on the stock market. My gosh, I'm busy creating. And you're absolutely right. I felt that way for a very long time. I resisted it for years and years. Fact is, at least right now in the world, the stock market is doing this while the economy is doing that. So, if you want to stay ahead of inflation, you honestly should be putting your money in places where it is going up. Just like the creative industries, the financial industries are full of scammers and people telling you BS, lots of flattery and fluff in your tail, and they're all just trying to sell you a product. What you really need to do is just open up an account in Schwab or E-Trade or Robinhood or any of those, just some online platform. And every quarter you can buy some of the big ETFs that are going up. So VTI, VT, QQQ, those are the trading symbols, the ticker symbols. No research, none of that. Just take literally, 2 minutes of your day every 4 months or so and buy another share of that kind of thing. And that account will grow instead of shrinking. So at least for now, as long as the economy stays up, of course, there's no guarantees in anything. Stock market could crash. Everyone is expecting a big crash to happen, and it likely is. And we'll see how well this video ages in 3 or 4 years or less. However, I think what I'm saying is not mind-blowing, and it really is just common sense. And all of the caveats I've seen come from guru financial advisors, you need to be careful, da-da-da. The creative arts are about 10,000 times more risky. So you've already got a risk mindset. Go for it. Of course, the way to make money is to have money. You start with $1 million, and if it's going up at 20%, so, it all depends on how much you're able to put into it, which is why it's great to have a day job. And hopefully one that is paying you more than minimum wage. What about investing in Bitcoin or things that are a little more risky like that? Bitcoin has worked out great for some people. Getting into it now, of course, the ship has more or less sailed, I think. It goes up and down. It's all about your risk tolerance and what you think you can afford to throw into it. I personally think that being an artist and being creative, you're already taking major risks with your life in all kinds of other ways. And so I think personally for me, I don't like taking massive risks on the side. A stable income really helps you be a creative. It funds that creative lifestyle. Okay, so now let's talk about all of the marketplaces. There's the ACX marketplace where voice actors can hook up with book writers. There's Redbubble and Zazzle and all kinds of online platforms where, as an artist, you can sell your stuff on merchandise like t-shirts and that sort of thing. There's itch.io and TurboSquid, where, as a game artist, you can sell your digital assets on those platforms. And there's other platforms in the makerspace with 3D printing and so forth. So, the question is it worth it? Is it worth spending your hard work and throwing it onto one of these marketplaces, some of which have major, major hurdles to jump through. Usually with the game asset ones, you've got to have your work verified, and they want to make sure you're not selling weird assets that can't actually be used well in a game. So some of them have those requirements. Others just take a massive cut of the royalties. And so I find that with merchandise areas like Redbubble, where you're putting your illustrations on people's t-shirts and mugs that they then buy, unless you are basically a major company doing that, you're going to make 10 cents a year, maybe. I mean, okay, it's a little bit of exaggeration, maybe $20 a year, but I do not think it's really worth your time and effort to chase things like that. Redbubble and those platforms will sell it to artists, and they'll say, oh, it's, the perfect place for you to sell your hopes and dreams, and they'll advertise it that way. But I think the reality is pretty obvious. Very, very few artists are making that kind of money on those platforms, and many of the ones who are churning stuff out with AI sweatshops, AI or sweatshops. So what those platforms have actually incentivized are people who cheat and not actual artists. So there you go. Take the risk as you will. I have actually sold some 3D art assets on TurboSquid, and I would like to try Itch as well. Now, that's more legit. However, I'm going to say again, that platform takes 50% or more. All of your hard work, if you're not selling that asset a lot and regularly, you're not making a whole lot of money. It's dollars and cents. There are 3D artists, low poly 3D artists usually, who just churn out massive asset packs and sell them for $100 each, and they have enough indie game artists buying those asset packs for them to make a living. And also for 3D printers, they have the same thing in their marketplaces. So yes, there are exceptions to the rule that do make a living doing that. However, they have devoted their entire life to that pursuit, and they're good at it, and good luck trying to compete with them if you're just doing it as a side hobby. How much did I make from TurboSquid last year? I think $20. Okay, so if you are a writer, why don't you sell your novel on Gumroad or Draft to Digital, or of course KDP, the Kindle store? Well, lots of writers do. Are they making a living at it? A very few again. Writing a beautiful, wonderful novel, putting it on these stores, let's say you set the price for $4 or whatever, $10, it doesn't matter. It's got zero visibility unless you have a major publisher with huge advertising dollars behind you, or you're an indie author who's maybe retired from a very successful career and has a few $1,000,000 to spend on ads, or who have married somebody who owns a marketing agency or an advertising agency. That has happened as well. You are competing with all of those people, by the way, if you don't have those things. I think that most creatives, at the end of the day, we really want a big audience. We want visibility more than we want a specific dollar amount or whatever. The thing is that these are tied together, of course. Giving your stuff away for free, you're not going to get much of a bigger audience. The freebies used to work, I think, in 2010 and earlier. But these days, because so many authors exist and are flooding the markets, nobody notices freebies anymore. Consumers are worn out on them. And so that's not the path anymore. I do post my work online for free, chapter by chapter, as web serials. And on certain platforms, that can still get you an audience. It's niche. You've got to be hitting the right tropes and so forth. And so I wouldn't say it's really any better. Now, the reason I mentioned Patreon is because that's where I do make some extra money. And I think there are web serial authors who make a decent amount using Patreon, at least for now. And they do it by posting chapters for free, getting people addicted to their story. And something like 5%, sometimes I think 1 to 5% of those readers will then pay a subscription to read ahead, 20 chapters ahead of the story, and get caught up. The Substack is another subscription model for writers, where you can earn a few cents or a few dollars here and there, depending on how many subscribers you have. Of course, the big names will be getting a big income from that, but everyone else is eking by. I think that's a clever way to do things. For now, at least, Patreon doesn't take a massive chunk of royalties out. It takes 3% or 4% or something like that. Maybe 8%. I'm not even sure. It depends on what tier of creator you are on the platform. But it's not taking 50% like TurboSquid and all these others. And I think Redbubble takes 80% or some huge, I have no idea. But all I'm saying is that there's reasons authors are going to certain platforms. Amazon itself, Amazon KDP, has famously offered basically 30 to 70% royalties to the actual authors. And so they take not a massive percentage sometimes, although they do a little bit with the audiobooks. These are the real considerations people are weighing. And it isn't really just about the money. It is about the audience you can get, the visibility. KDP has a massive readership base, but by the same token, it's very hard to be discovered. As they say, we're in an attention economy. Platforms that give you visibility are where it's at. I was kind of laughing at the Amazon Kindle Vella debacle. So they offered this platform, but it was like, bring your own readers. And so they didn't offer you an audience, no visibility, no attention. And of course, it folded within a few years. Okay, and then what about vending in person at conventions? I've done this quite a lot in the last 2 years. Some of those shows I do well at, and I am able to sell quite a lot of books. I think it's much more possible to earn money that way if you are self-published and you are paying, you're buying the print copies at cost, so then you can sell them at a profit. That doesn't happen for people with publishers in general. So it is very much an indie niche thing. However, much like the indie world, there is no quality control, and I have seen, unfortunately, some indie authors just selling books full of typos, having typos on their posters and merchandise, and I'm like, wow, you really took pride in your work there. And some consumers will buy it because they give a good pitch or whatever, and I'm sure they then read the story going, and it gives a bad name to indies in general. Whereas there are indie authors who are genuinely great authors or great artists selling their work at these places, and they're having to compete with the Star Wars booth and the Marvel booth and all those, people selling the things that consumers came to the convention in the first place to get or to see. So it's still a hard scrabble life doing it that way. In closing, I'd like to say that I believe the scammers are probably making more money collectively per day than the actual artists and all of the creative industries combined. So, I guess if you really want to make money and just not care about anything else, you can become a scammer or a guru selling courses. If you genuinely have something new to contribute to the world creatively, then watch out for all the scammers. Don't get suckered in by the flattery and the products that they're selling. I think once you've been scammed 1 or 2 times, it's enough to let you know, to just be on the lookout for these things. So maybe warnings aren't necessary here, but be on the lookout. I'm a born creative. I'll just keep doing this until I die. Maybe someday I'll be able to do it full time. That is the dream of many authors and many artists. And I believe, the people that have hit that success, some of them hit it in their 50s, 60s, 70s. It does not come early to most people or to, unless you get extremely lucky. I do wish when I was younger I had set my expectations accordingly. Of course, everybody thinks they're going to be the exception to the rule, especially if they are doing awesome stuff or very new stuff that hasn't been seen before or stuff that they haven't seen, I think in particular, people that were overachievers who got A's in school very easily, passed exams extremely easily. I was one of those people. You get told again and again by adults when you're that kind of kid, things will be much harder in college or in adulthood, or this exam is going to be really difficult. And it never is. And so you start to ignore all that advice and all those warnings. The advice and warnings are legit when it comes to creativity because there's a lot of luck involved, and that's all there is to it. The people I see succeed, they have everything it takes. They've been going at it for years and years. There's a kind of a saying, I'm just another 20-year overnight success story, which many of them are. There is a lucky break factor that happens, and it's not guaranteed. There's a lot of people who die trying, but it does happen for some at least. And I guess that's what gives us all hope and keeps us going. It keeps me going. Getting back to the financial side of things, I'm a big believer in financial freedom and financial independence. So I think that if you are dependent on somebody else for income, that can be creatively stifling. And so it is good to have your own income, whether that be a day job or you've retired and you've invested the savings from your day job or whatever. I do think it's important to have income coming in because very likely you're not making it as a creative right out of the gate unless you really know somebody. People who take a year off to work on their novel or to work on their game, I think very often they find that a year was never enough or that it didn't work out the way they wanted it to. It is always just a learning experience. There are definitely ways to earn $5 here, $10 there as a creative. There are artists who post their work on Reddit as our starving artists are commissions, and they'll get commissions through VGen and other sites like that. So it's always possible to sort of eke out a living. However, I would say that eking out $10 here, $20 there, that's not real financial independence. That's not going to give you the creative freedom you need, at least not in the United States or in Western countries. There are people that are moving to third world countries in order to be more creatively free, and I think that's totally valid, and more power to them. But to earn the kind of money that's equivalent to a white-collar job, that's rare in the creative arts. Very rare, and I do believe it takes an exceptional luck event to make that happen. You hit the cultural zeitgeist, you connect with the right celebrity, whatever it is, you need that, and that's no guarantee. There is never any guarantee of that happening. Alternatively, it might happen, but you might have been at it for 20 or 30 or 40 years. I'd be happy to hear about the experiences of other artists and other creatives, so feel free to mention it in the comments of this video, like and subscribe, and all of that. You can also subscribe to my Patreon, where I post a chapter per week or more, and I might also give updates and other freebies.